Hello, everybody. Welcome to the TriStar Gym channel. Today's episode, we are doing an Ask Me Anything. We're talking about any topic whatsoever. I will be doing Strickland versus Duplessis in the future, but it's that far. That fight is still far off. Let's kick it off, guys. I'm reading up in the chat. I'm taking super chats and non-super chats. Let's talk about fitness, training, fighting first, and then we'll open the door to all the crazy questions anybody may have. All right, guys, let's see. Winnipeg, yo, that's from Tobias. What's up, Winnipeg? My favorite podcast incoming. Hazy Bubble, you have quite a taste in podcasts, my friend. Yes, thank you. Armin or Darius? I think you mean Armin or Dariush. That's a very hard fight to pick. I didn't like Dariush's last performance. Something seemed off. I love Dariush. I'm a big Dariush fan. Normally, I would choose Dariush. He beat Gamrot. It was a close fight. Controversial. Not everybody agrees, but I think he beat him. Very, very good fight. Now, if the Dariush that fought Gamrot shows up, I think Dariush is going to win. If the Dariush that fought Oliveira shows up, I think he's going to lose. I don't know what happened there. I think maybe he had an injury in training, a bad weight cut, something he added new in his regimen that doesn't agree with him and he's not aware of it. You know, some guys change their entire diet and all of a sudden their performance dips. Sometimes they change their entire diet and their performance skyrockets. Sometimes they work with a new coach who has a different approach and it just puts a stick in his wheels. How do you say that? What is that expression? Un bâton dans roue. You know, it just like a stick in his wheel and just flips over his bike. It just screws up everything. What happened to him in the Oliveira fight? He didn't look like his normal self. Do you support Trudeau for PM? That's from Parabellum. Look, I'm not an expert in Canadian politics. Trudeau used to train at my gym. Okay, so look, there are things he's done I didn't like, and I'm a lesser evil type of guy. If there's two evils, I'm gonna vote for the lesser evil. I don't know what's the lesser evil out there. I really don't know. I'm not an expert politician, but there are things he did that I didn't like. I really did not like. You know, they asked him during the thing I'm not allowed to talk about. They asked him, you know, how do you go about making monetary policy? You know, he was making all these radical decisions, trying to save us from this thingamajigger out there in the air that when people cough, it goes in the air. I'm not allowed to say the word. He's like, I don't even think about monetary policy. You don't even think about monetary policy? We got to pay the bill. The taxpayers got to pay the bill. We gotta live with the debt after. Like, is this a scientific approach? You know, and the thing is, I was reading up so much about what other countries were doing, and they were all like, this guy's out to lunch. You know, this guy, he's ringing the alarm bell, creating mass inflation. Mass. When you're rich, guys, when you're on top of the mountain, when your father was prime minister and you're prime minister and you have assets, inflation is good. Inflation. Look, I own a home. I own properties. Okay? Inflation is good for guys like us. I'm telling you, I think inflation is bad for the general public. It's bad for the everyday person. I'm against inflation. Everybody should be against inflation, but the rich love inflation. They love it. Why? Their house was worth $1 million. Now it's worth $1.4 million. That sounds a lot better than $1 million. 1.4. Their value skyrockets. They have assets. And plus, if you have loans, let's say I borrowed $100,000 5 years ago, and now there's mass inflation. Well, that loan is not as heavy as it was before. So these guys, they use a lot of leverage to buy assets. So everything, their assets go up, and their debts go down. They love it. But a regular Joe living paycheck to paycheck, trying to scratch up together a living, trying to keep his family fed and clothed, inflation is so bad. It's so bad. Anyways, guys, I digress. Fighting, fitness, and then all the crazy topics. I can't believe I took that question. I got bamboozled there. Salam, coach. How you experience Islamic ego death? Okay, well, we'll talk about that later. Okay, now, guys, Liban, it's fighting, fitness, jiu-jitsu, boxing, wrestling. We're talking about fitness first. Coach, I need to get muscular neck for MMA, but I do not want to develop sleep. What? I need to get a muscular neck for MMA, but I don't want to develop sleep apnea. Please help. Why would you develop sleep apnea from developing a strong neck? I don't understand. Like, there's 1,001 exercises. Guys, if you want to build a strong neck, in my opinion, the best way is you get a stretch band, you anchor it, and you walk forward, and you put your neck under tension, and you do just 1/4 inch movements. Don't move your head more than that, okay? You don't need an expensive halo. You know, the halo, it's like $300. They send me one for free. I never use it, to be honest with you. You don't need it. I just use a stretch band. You can get one for $20. You get 2 stretch bands, a thin one, and I show it in strong and stable neck. You do every angle, and that's the best way to do it. You pull the band pulls your neck, and you just do 1/4 turn. You're just under tension. Don't use heavy weights on your neck. You're going to use up the discs in your neck. Trust me, this is the safest and best way to strengthen your neck. Now, there are other ways. I show a lot of bridging on the neck. I show safe ways to build your neck. But I had never heard of it. Anybody suffering from sleep apnea because of it. Trudeau sold weapons to Saudi Arabia and then used those, and they used those in Yemen. Not a fan of anyone in Canadian politics. They're all Machiavellian. That's from Hassan Haytham. Well, you know what? Listen, I agree with you. You know, you don't want to spread violence around the world, but you can say that about every single state. Like any single state that has money and does business, sooner or later they exchange monies with people in the global village. You know, that's not the nicest guy in the world. You know, like I remember one time I was being not investigated, but I was being questioned. You know. And because they were doing this, the fight commission now in Quebec, they were like, anybody who wants a fight MMA license, you're going to have to go through scrutiny. Okay, so I'm a corner. I'm cornering in Quebec, and Quebec was hammering down on any fighter or any cornerman or anything like that has anything to do with criminal activity. Now, I have nothing to do with criminal activity, but they were like, if anybody's arm's length, if you have a text message with somebody, like they were really scrutinized. So they told me, hey, these 3 people are members in your gym. I'm like, okay, what do you think I do when the people sign up to the gym? The guy signed up to the gym. He's walking in society. He didn't come in a yellow jumpsuit with a parole number on, with a prisoner number on his shirt, and he wasn't in handcuffs. He wasn't like, there wasn't a most wanted poster standing right behind him. The guy came in, he signed up. He's a civilian. You think I do background checks on people before they sign up to the gym? They're like, well, you should know who's training you in the gym. I have no idea who this gentleman is. Like, I might know his name. I know he trains in this class, but the guy he doesn't like hit the bag and say, hey, by the way, I sell drugs on the side. You know, I don't know what he does for a living. I don't ask people, you know, we train together. Hi, how are you? And over time, yeah, we might ask, you know, what do you do for a living? It can come up, absolutely. But when people walk in the gym and sign up, I don't do a background check. I'm like, if the guy's a criminal, put him in jail. If the guy's not a criminal and he's walking the streets, he's welcome to come in and train in my gym. I let anybody sign up. I don't care where you're from, you know, obviously I don't want a convicted killer or some kind of dangerous person, but you guys understand what I'm saying. I mean, I was telling them, is it my duty to do a background check? You want me to get a private eye? And every single guy that signs up, I want to know, you know, I want a urine test. I want a blood test. I want to check his phone. I want to hear recordings of his private calls. Like, what do you guys want me to do? And they were like, yeah, they were just trying to like give me grief. You know, I got my license. I never had any trouble with really the commission, but I was just surprised that they were kind of telling me, well, how come you let them train in your gym? Well, what do you mean? How come I let people train in my gym? I don't know what this man does for a living. Stretch bands break and hit you in the face. That's from Casey Jones. Well, in the video, I teach you guys that you always check the band first. If there's any tears, you discard the band, okay? Every time you do a stretch band workout, you have to check for tears, okay? If there's a microscopic tear, throw it out. Now, when I do my stretch band, I always have a hand on the band. So if it breaks, it hits my hand, never my face, okay? So I'm a big believer in stretch band. Guys, I've never had a stretch band break and hit me in the face. I always check my stretch bands, and I replace them periodically. They're very cheap, but super, super effective for building muscle and strength, power, strength, etc. Coach, have you been informed about the Ian Garry situation? That's from Young Joe. I'm seeing it all over the internet. I didn't click on the video. I'm watching, I'm going through my YouTube feed. Ian Garry, Ian Garry, Ian Garry, Ian Garry, Ian. What's going on with this guy? Let me play one of these videos. I specifically didn't want to click because I didn't want to know anything about it. But now, Ian Garry. What's happening with this man? Exposing Ian Garry's aesthetic physique. Okay, what's that about? What's Garry supposed to do? Oh my God. That's from... Her book is worse than you think. What?
Things just got a lot weirder when it comes to the Ian Garry situation. And I'm referring to some of the tweets that Layla Annalee, Ian Garry's wife, has put out within the past 48 hours.
Hold on a second. I always loved law. Gained a Harvard certification in contract law 4 years ago. Was one of the smartest moves I ever made. Now I'm studying slander, libel, and defamation, opening a foundation to place all funds made from defamation cases to go towards positive causes. Okay, so she's a lawyer and she's being defamed and she's gonna go after everybody. Okay, interesting.
Very interesting, especially if you look at the timeline of this stuff. And I'm not here to say that this is exactly what Layla Annalee is doing, Layla Machado Garry. I'm just saying that I find this stuff to be interesting, to say the least. Now, what I'm going to do, guys, is I am going to quote a part of this book. Now, it's fair use. The book is public, okay? I'm just going to quote a part of this book. I'm just going to let you guys know what's in it because I've read a section on it. And I'm then going to show you what she tweeted the other day about the law, and I think a lot of you guys have already seen that. And then I'm going to bring in the timeline and tell you guys why this is so strange, okay? So the first thing I want to do...
Guys, this is boring me to death, man. I don't know. I can't listen to another second. Sorry, guys. Boring. Too boring. Coach, how do you avoid wrist pain as a newbie boxer? That's from a Hazy Bubble. Look, I will tell you, learn how to wrap your hands properly, and then slowly take off the wraps, okay? Once your hands feel good, take off the wraps. I always hit the bag, gloves, and sometimes no gloves. I rarely wear hand wraps, only if my hands are hurting. I think that boxers who are doing 12 rounds and they're throwing hundreds of punches, yes, they should wear hand wraps and they baby their hands. But if you look at karate guys, their hands are so, first of all, they're massive. By hitting boards, you create more powerful bone density. You have stronger hands. I'm a big believer in strengthening your hands. Hit the bag, bare knuckles sometimes. Don't rip the skin on your knuckles. Don't go that far, but toughen up those hands. You're going to be a better puncher because you're going to learn to punch in a way that doesn't sprain your wrist or injure your fingers, because you're going to punch more mechanically sound, because you have to. If you punch incorrectly, you'll hurt your wrist, your thumb, etc. Gloves can kind of dummy up the alignment. Okay, so I think you should wear gloves because you don't want to rip the skin on your hands, but don't pamper your hands too much unless they're injured. Okay, now I do a lot of training, right? So I do a lot of push-ups, pull-ups. I do a lot of kettlebell stuff. So when I'm inverting the kettlebell, it trains my wrist stability. You can build the stability in your wrist. I do a lot of like hammer. So hammer also destabilizes the wrist. Sledgehammer, I mean. Check out Strong and Stable Shoulders. I talk about how to build your shoulders. It also builds the wrist and elbow. I just use a very inexpensive hammer to build my wrist, elbow, and shoulder. I highly recommend you wrap your hands till the pain goes away. And when the pain is not there, just wear the gloves. And once in a while, sneaking around with no gloves on. Hit the bag with no gloves on. Salam, Coach. Thoughts on 297 card main event? 297. Which one is... I don't go by the numbers. So what's 297? 297 UFC. Who's the main event? 297. Which one is that? Oh, Strickland Duplessis. Yeah, that's going to be... I'm going to be there. That's going to be in Toronto. Very excited about that. Man, I have to go through their footage. Guys, preliminary thoughts. I'm going with Strickland, but I got to go through all their footage. I watched Duplessis fight against Whitaker. It blew my mind. I thought Whitaker was going to put it to him, and he knocked Whitaker down with a jab. It blew my mind that he was able to knock Whitaker down with a jab. He's a hard hitter. He comes from a kickboxing background. Yes, he's fought one of my fighters, Roberto Soldic. Roberto lost to him, then came to me to train. And then in the rematch, he knocked Duplessis out. Very good striker, but still knocking a guy like Robert Whitaker down with a jab. Robert Whitaker has a crazy good chin. He's a very athletic guy. He's a very robust individual. I was quite surprised that with a simple jab, he was able to hurt Whitaker the way he did. Coach, how to study and read better? That's from Ali Khan. There's a lot of studying tactics. I will tell you, like, I do a lot of mnemonics. I don't want to get into it too much now, but one thing I highly, highly, highly recommend is when you're reading a book and something's interesting, make a note of it. No, you'll will never read your note, but just the fact that you wrote it down, you went through that exercise, you organized your thoughts about it, will stick in your memory. That's a very, very good tactic. Should I spend much time on improving my wrestling if I didn't start BJJ till I was 26? I feel like I'll never catch up to wrestlers that have been doing it since childhood. That's from I am one letter short. You should learn your wrestling just as much as you do your jiu-jitsu. Think about wrestling, right? Wrestlers, they do ground. People think, oh, wrestlers, it's all stand-up. It's completely wrong. They all wrestle on the ground, all of them. That's why when they go in the jiu-jitsu world, they're like doing takedowns and they're doing ground. Now, of course, their ground has different rules, different strategies, but they spend a lot of time on the ground. They know how to balance themselves. They get it. They get the grips. They understand gripping. They have all the attributes to work on the ground, of course, the cardio, etc. It makes no sense to just do ground. It makes no sense. Now, listen, one day you might be in a street altercation. It might happen, okay? And the guy pushes you, slaps you, calls you names, and you sit to guard. Shame on you. I always tell my students, if you ever sit to guard in a street fight, I hope you get a beating. I hope. Because you should learn double leg, snap down, that kind of. You don't have to be the world's best wrestler, but know wrestling. Don't compete with others. No, because it's such an incomplete style to just be a grappler on the ground. It's so incomplete. It makes your jiu-jitsu weaker. You know what? I will tell you that at least drill wrestling. Do double leg, snap down. Now, even if you don't wrestle, even if you're like, I'm worried I'm going to hurt myself or whatever. Okay, fine. Do your jiu-jitsu. Take 10 minutes after you're done rolling and all that. Drill double leg, single leg. Learn one or two wrestling techniques and just drill them. Then learn another and just develop a wrestling routine. Okay. When you develop a wrestling routine, you're going to want to wrestle. Okay. You're going to want to wrestle. It's fun. And make sure you're really warmed up and you'll enjoy wrestling. If ever you're in a fight, some guy slaps you, calls you a bad name, you grab him, put him down on the ground, and teach him a lesson. Now, you can't really get him on the ground by grabbing his shirt and sitting to guard. The guy's just going to punch you in the face. Okay, so I just find it so absurd when people don't wrestle. It's crazy. Do you prefer red meat or white meat? That's from Build Your Body. For taste, red meat. For I'm back on my low-fat, high-carb diet, which I love. I eat lean turkey, chicken breast, and lean ground beef. So ultimately, I love red meat, but I do a lot of chicken breast because it has higher protein, lower fat. It's very good for getting your protein numbers up, but not the fat, guys. I don't like too much fat. I find when I go high fat, low carb, more high fat, less carbs, kills my practice, my training. I have less endurance. I don't feel as good. I've tried it. Okay. I did when we had the Carnivore MD, I tried the high meat diet. Yes, I put on muscle, but I also put on a lot of fat. I usually not that bulky. I tried it for months. I was hoping my body would regulate. I just never felt good in the practice room. Too much fat for me doesn't work. I've tried it, guys. I tried to be open-minded. I tried it. My favorite type of diet is, and I don't exclude any food. Okay. I never exclude any food. I eat fats. I eat healthy fats, but I keep it to a minimum. Okay. Most of my calories come from carbohydrates, and that's fruit, grains, vegetables, and of course, my meat. I keep them low fat, especially animal fats. Okay, I'll have olive oil. I have all sorts of healthy fats in my diet, but they're more on a minimum. Coach, have you been informed? Oh yeah, okay, did that one. Badir K, you're a gentleman and a scholar. Thank you. Hey, Coach, are you still in your age able to spar against pro MMA fighters? That's from Jonathan Weissman. Yes, absolutely. Yes, I've gloved up with MMA fighter, UFC fighter, prepping for his fight He has a fight coming up soon, and I was one of the sparring partners. I also sometimes need a style to mimic. Guys, I can mimic any style. I can mimic. I've been doing this for so long. Okay, I can mimic almost any style. Like I have my own style, but if somebody in the practice room, like if the sparring partners, I don't feel they can mimic that style, sometimes I'll glove up and I'll do it because I've been doing this for so many years. Okay, so I can mimic any style. So I like to get in the ring once in a while. Guys, don't forget I've sparred so much in my life. For me, gloving up and sparring, yeah, of course, I'll be rusty. I need to train regularly to be in tip-top shape, but I do a lot of striking. So I keep up with my drills. I do a lot of touch sparring mostly, but sometimes I spar big gloves and like full speed, and absolutely. And I like it. I enjoy it. I love it. My favorite training is MMA training. Striking with takedowns. We go to the ground. We continue. It's the most fun. I have the most fun. Now, most of the time I'm training grappling by itself, and then we'll wrestle with jiu-jitsu. Now, I never do just straight wrestling. I do wrestling with jiu-jitsu. So meaning if I shoot on the guy, he'll try to guillotine me. I'll try to kimura him. We're really marrying grappling and jiu-jitsu because at TriStar, every grappling class, every jiu-jitsu class has wrestling in it. So either we drill wrestling or after we've warmed up on the ground, we're going to wrestle standing. So we're constantly working our wrestling. And I find it's the new way of doing things. Before we used to grapple at one school, then do wrestling at another. No. The wrestling secrets, we know wrestling. We know underhook. We know snap down. Of course, there's always more details. That's why we bring in wrestlers and stuff like that. But we know how to do these moves. So now we're just kind of, jiu-jitsu and wrestling they're getting married. Okay, the top schools, they're marrying wrestling and jiu-jitsu. There's no top school, in my opinion, in the future that can just do ground. I think they're being weeded out at fast pace, and I can't even think of one school right now that's really high caliber that doesn't wrestle. I can't even think of one. None is coming to mind. So my favorite training is when we're doing it all. It's just so fun. There's so much to think about. There's so much going on. It's really amazing. Coach, what do you eat, drink after a long day of training? That's from Atlas Tessia. Well, sometimes I do intermittent fasting. Most of the time I'm doing intermittent fasting, so I don't eat dinner. Okay, usually I don't eat dinner. So I'll do breakfast, lunch, a snack, practice. I stop eating at 6. Generally, I stop eating at 6. But I have been adding, it's called a new protein powder, which I love because most protein powders don't agree with me, guys. They give me gas. They really mess me up. This one is called Naked Rice. I recently started Naked Rice, a real organic brown rice protein. I like whey protein. Whey protein for me was giving me gas. I'm trying Naked Rice. I'm going to see how it goes. But the taste, I love the taste of Naked Rice. It's really, really good. If you guys ever tried it. It's a bit expensive. It's organic rice protein. It's a bit more expensive than I like to pay for protein powder, but very well worth it. So let's say after practice, I train really, really hard. I feel like I need to eat a supper. Usually I'll have a protein shake. 2 scoops, so that's 60 grams of protein. If I feel like I'm losing too much weight too fast, I'll chuck a protein drink. But that's only because I'm worried I'm losing too much weight too fast. Please, coach, I'm a submission grappling athlete, a beginner amateur at it, and how do I drill when I do BJJ? Should it be resistance drilling or drilling with no resistance? Most of them to gain skill rapid. That's from Pinky. Pinky, I think you're asking me what's the best way to drill. Drill and cooperate when you're drilling. Okay, when we're drilling, sometimes I'll show a move. Let's say I show an armbar, and the guy doing the armbar on his partner's going to start like defending it and like, oh, I would do this. And it's like, don't do that. Don't find all the 10,000 escapes that you can do. I'm aware it's not the perfect move. Like, I get it. But the guy can't even do armbar. Like, before we go deep into the minutia and start talking about what if it's a Tuesday and there's a ray of light beaming through in the gym from the East Coast to the West Coast direction. Don't get complicated. Just let that guy learn how to armbar this one particular way. We need to work. We need somewhere to start. Okay, so once you guys can drill armbar, then of course we're going to learn. If the guy does this, you reply this way. If the guy does that, we go here. Okay, so it's like Commonly beginners, when they start drilling, they almost start fighting. You don't want to do that, okay? What is drilling? Drilling is to teach you all the possibilities one by one. As you learn possibilities, you start to see the common theme, all these things out. You start learning principles, okay? First, we learn the particulars. We learn how to do a particular armbar. You're learning to move your body. You're learning coordination, okay? You're learning how to shift your weight from one place to another. You're learning only one move. Now, one move means nothing. It means nothing. When you have 50, 60 moves, now it starts to mean something. When you have 100 moves, now, okay. But to get to 100, it takes drilling. It takes coordination. Now, once you're at 100 moves drilled, now I could just show you a move once and you'll do it. You don't even really have to drill it so much. Now, I still think you should drill it. You can go higher, but it gets exponentially easier to learn moves. Think about that. The more moves you learn, the easier it is to learn more moves in the future. Why? Because they have something in common with other moves I've drilled, so I already have those habits and I already have that coordination built inside me, in my neurological makeup. Guys, me, I watch fights, I see a move, I never drilled it. I'll go and I'll do it in the practice room. Why? I'm not a special guy. I've just been drilling so long that often I can just see a guy did something. I'm like, oh, he does, instead of doing it the way I do it, he did it a little bit different. He chose to this detail, something I never thought of. And I'm like, oh, why don't I just try that? It's not hard for me to move my foot 2 inches this way and then maybe put my arm in a different spot. It's still similar to something else we've done. So that's what I'm trying to tell you guys, is the more you learn moves, the faster you start learning. Okay, now, the more moves you have in your neurological makeup, the more combinations, the more possibilities. Now we start talking about minutia, but it's really first drilling. Try to make it look exactly like the instructor did it. Both of you, I always tell people, you have to be a good partner. You know, like today I was teaching how to run the pipe. And I was like, guys, you can't run the pipe unless my partner's giving me a heavy leg. If my partner gives me a heavy leg, I run the pipe. Okay? A lot of you guys in the States, you call it the dump or running the pipe. In Canada, there's something they call it a chest pressure, even though I don't think that name makes sense because I don't really use my chest to push it down. When you run the pipe, guys, there's only one instance. The guy's leg is heavy. He's trying to sprawl it to the ground. I run the pipe. He'll fall. I don't care if he's the best athlete. If the leg is not heavy and I run the pipe, he won't fall. So I tell the guys, be a good partner. Make the leg heavy. And if your partner doesn't remember to make the leg heavy, you remind him. You're training the dump. You're training to run the pipe. You know that you need a heavy leg. So if I grab a guy's leg and he doesn't make it heavy, I won't run the pipe. I know there's no point in me running the pipe. That's not how running the pipe works. I need the guy to give me a heavy leg. So when you're drilling, it's a ballet. It's maximum coordination. The athlete, the person doing the drill and the person being drilled on, they need to cooperate to make it look perfect. We're not rolling yet. After we're going to roll and be as uncooperative as possible, it's my job now to force you into a submission hold. That's later. But drilling is the complete opposite. Drilling is coordination. How corrupted? Oh my God. All right. We're 30 minutes in, guys. Okay, hold on. How corrupted by Western decadence and liberal ideology do you think you are? Port film comes with the uppercut. Is that a question paradoxical to answer in Canada? Surprise, you took vax. Okay, I'm going to reread this again. How corrupted by Western decadence and liberal ideology do you think you are? Question mark. Is that question paradoxical to answer in Canada? Surprise, you took vax. That's from Port Film Co-op. Look, Port, I got to be honest with you, okay? I only took the VAX because I wasn't able to travel without it. They were making my life hell, even if I took the VAX, okay? If I didn't take it, I had all these other hoops I had to draw. I couldn't even go to the States. I couldn't do my job. And I would be detained if I did travel. It was just such a nightmare. I didn't take it because I thought it was going to save me or protect me or heal me or... No, I didn't. Okay, and I know a lot of you guys out there are cowboys and you're like, I'd rather die than put that in my body. I get it. Okay, I get it. Trust me, if it wasn't for my job, I would not have taken it. I didn't feel any urgency to take it. I didn't believe them when they told me it's going to do this and that. There's the research. I read the research myself. There was no indication. There was plenty of experts out there saying, look, We have to wait and see. We don't know. So for me, I don't want to be, I had one of my friends who's a doctor. And I asked him, are you going to take it? Or are you going to give it to your, he has children. He's like, not the first batch. He goes, he's a doctor. He's high up. I don't want to mention his name, but he's high up. And he's like, no, not the first batch. Why? What in a million? Like, it's not urgent for these kids. Their survival rate is literally 100%. So anyways, I don't want to get into these topics. I just don't want to get into those because you know how it is. Long story short, they twisted my arm. And I did it, guys. Why? Because I got guys competing their career, not their life, but their career, their whole career. The trajectory of their life is really going to be affected whether, I can assist them or not. Like, I'm there. I'm fully there for the fighters. I'm fully there. What are they? You need me there? I got to take a vax to be there for you. I'm going to do it. That's how I saw it. Okay, I'm going to be there for the guys who need me. And if I have to do whatever it is that the government wants me to do, that's why I did it. Believe me, I didn't do it because the literature. Not at all. I did it for those guys who needed me to cross that border. How corrupted by Western decadence and liberal ideology do you think you are? I mean, listen, I'm not a big fan of liberalism. Okay, and I think there's good things in liberalism, and I think there's bad things in liberalism. The criticism I have about liberalism is what most people will say, most philosophers will tell you, that it creates division. My son is a communist. My wife, she shaves her head and she's a blue-haired vegan. My daughter is doing namaste in the park, or she's following some kind of yoga guy or whatever. Like, we're all because I don't want to get too much on the philosophies of liberalism, but liberalism hails from John Locke. Okay, John Locke would tell us, look, do what makes you happy, go into pursuit of happiness, but don't harm others. The harm principle. Okay, do what makes you happy. Don't harm others. Liberalism is much more complicated than that. It has a lot to do with political views, etc. I'm just giving it in a nutshell. Okay. Do what makes you happy. Pursue happiness. Don't harm others. On the face of it, it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. I have no problem with you pursuing happiness. Now, I think there's more things than pursuing happiness. I don't think happiness is the ultimate goal. I think if you pursue happiness, this is my own philosophical ideas, you'll become miserable. If you pursue your own personal happiness, this is what I teach my children. If you try to make yourself happy, you will become miserable. Now, we'll circle back to that topic if necessary later. Liberalism tells you, look, do what makes you happy. But there's a caveat, don't harm anyone else. So if somebody says, well, you know what, taking that woman will make me happy. Well, you're harming her. You can't do that. That's against her will. Okay, liberalism, because originally people criticized liberalism. It's like, can I do anything that makes me happy? He's like, no. The harm principle is paramount. You cannot harm another. Okay. So if you want that Lamborghini, you can't steal it from your neighbor. You got to buy it from your neighbor. You can't harm him. Beautiful on the face of it, but here's what happens. The state that's liberal, over time, a few decades, the grandchildren are not recognized by the grandparents. The grandparents are like, we live totally different than you. We don't even know who you are anymore. We have more in common with people overseas than we do with our own children. Why? The children go in all sorts of lifestyles, but you taught them that. That's why, a lot of people critique certain movements, cultural movements we have. And I tell them, look, you taught your children this. You taught them, go out there and find what makes you happy. Well, he found that meditating under a tree and following this guru makes him happy. But that's completely opposite to your lifestyle, your values, your beliefs, your way of living. But you told him to go out there and find yourself. As opposed to how I live. Like, I teach my children our values, our way of life, and I teach them why we live this way. So I can tell you, look, which way I live. Some people tell me I'm crazy, and I tell them, look, I tell my friends, I think this is crazy, and we compare notes, and I want to know why. Why do you think it's crazy? And show me how it benefited you in life. And that's how I convince my children to live the way we lived. The way we live And it's not liberal. I don't live in a liberal way. I don't believe that everybody should pursue their own personal happiness. I think it divides the family, it divides the state, it divides the culture. All of a sudden, I think it destroys families. Like the nuclear family. I think liberalism will destroy you. Like I have a friend of mine, his sister had a child, okay? And he was really, really happy. He was so happy. But he's estranged with his sister. He's estranged. Why? They have completely different values. They can't even sit down at a family dinner together. The parents have to have separate dinners for the two children. Two adults here. One day for his son, and one day for his daughter, because the two can't be together. Anyway, she has a son. She has a child. And he calls her up. He's like, I want to congratulate you on your son. Like he was trying to be the bigger man. And she told him, because he said, look, congratulations on having your baby boy. I'm so happy for you. And he was like, he wants to have a relationship with his nephew. You know what his sister told him? He says, he's not a boy. He's a baby with I can't say the word, but you know what I mean. He's a baby with a male genitalia. He's not a male. He's not a boy. Don't call him a boy. We don't know if he's a boy. That he's going to decide that later. Now, you have to understand, my friend, he's like, he's very completely antagonist to this. Like, he thinks like you're born one way and that's how, he's more old fashioned. It's blowing his mind. Like, look how we've parted ways in our way of seeing the world. Now, I'm not completely 100% traditional too. I believe that there's a happy medium between the two, but going full liberal, I think everybody starts living in a different direction. And all of a sudden, we don't have anything in common. We don't have anything in common. We have no more values. What we used to consider to be right or wrong is no longer right and wrong. And all of a sudden, we're debating on every little topic. And to cross the street now, it's a major topic. Hey, should you be allowed to cross like this? Oh, I find it insulting that you cross this way because people 3,000 years ago used to do that for certain. It's like, dude, you're bringing an interpretation, an estranged, a foreign interpretation to what we're doing here. Yeah, but I identify with these foreign traditions. Wow, now you've become completely antagonist to our way of life here. Okay. What else we got here? Shiz Akhmedov. Shiz, I'm gonna get you on this channel one day. I'm gonna get you your own mic. Coach, thanks for all the shout outs from last time. Big fight coming from my boy Tony Ferguson, the boogeyman against Paddy the Baddy. Oh, really? They signed that fight? Wow. Tony was never the same fighter after Justin Gaethje and had 6 losses, but he ain't quitting. OG. You're right. He is an OG. They put him against Paddy. Wow. Man, I really wish Tony would come train with me for that fight. I don't know when that fight is, but I would love to turn him around. Tony, if you're hearing this, man, if anybody can get this to Tony, come train with me for the Pimblett fight. We're going to get a W. Hey, Coach, thoughts on goat trotters bone broth for protein and health. Also, DC says Kane was the best when injury-free. Khabib agrees. GSP versus Khamzat at 185. Who wins? That's from BHVK. Thoughts on goat trotters bone broth for protein. I haven't tried goat trotters bone broth, but if anybody wants to send me, I would try bone broth protein, but I'm not sure if bone broth protein has protein. I wonder where the protein element's coming from. Was Kane the best, guys? Let's look at his record. Let's go to the record. Kane Velasquez topology. Guys, I remember when Kane got to UFC, his coaches were raving about him. They were saying he's the best, he's the best, he's the best, he's the best. They were raving about him, okay? Let's see what he did in his UFC career. Let's go over it real quick here. First UFC fight. Okay, he won in Bulldog. First UFC fight was Brad Morris win punches in round 1. Then Jake O'Brien wins in round 1. Stojanik round 2, KO. Punches. Sheikh Congo wins by decision. Ben Rothwell wins by round 2. He fights Nogueira, round 1. I don't remember that fight. Actually, I have to go back and rewatch it. Brock Lesnar, of course. He beat Brock Lesnar, round 1. That was an epic win. Loses to Junior Dos Santos, live on Fox. First time on Fox, heavyweight fight. The fight lasts 1 minute. We all remember that fight. Junior Dos Santos threw the biggest overhand right you've ever seen. Knocks out Cain Velasquez in 1 minute, 4 seconds. He fights Antonio Silva, Bigfoot Silva. Guys, if you haven't seen Bigfoot Silva, he's one of the most freaky athletes ever to fight in heavyweight. Punches round 1. Another incredible... Guys, this is an incredible win streak. Incredible. He rematches against Dos Santos, wins by unanimous decision, had him up against the fence quite a bit. He was clinching him the whole way through, grounding, not really getting him to the ground, but it wasn't the most exciting fight, but it was quite an incredible performance by Velasquez. Antonio Silva, he fights Antonio Silva twice. Okay, I'm not remembering that. I remember he KOs him. I have to rewatch that. I don't remember him fight. He wins both times in round 1 by punches. So he beat Antonio Silva twice. I don't know why they would put him. He fights Junior Santos. Junior Dos Santos again. Slam and punches. That's round 5. I got to go back to watch that one. I don't remember that fight. He fights Verdum, loses to Verdum. Guillotine choke in round 3. Travis Brown, ground and pound. He wins. I don't think I remember that fight, actually. And he fights Francis Ngannou, gets knocked out in round 1. Guys, Ngannou's the GOAT. John Jones, if he fought Ngannou, I think John Jones will beat Ngannou, but I can't say John Jones is the GOAT of heavyweight because he only has 1 fight, never defended his title. But I'm telling you, Ngannou is the GOAT of heavyweight. So I couldn't, just because of that, I couldn't say Velasquez could be the GOAT. However, Velasquez was on an incredible win streak. He's a legend. One of the best ever. Okay, guys. Now let's open it up to absolutely anything. Okay, guys. I'm going to be doing a mix of super chats and non-super chats. Can't morality just be an emergent property of natural selection at the group level? Over time, groups that don't kill and steal will have an advantage. Where is the need for God? That's from 2357. It's not that, look, I understand what you're saying. Morality could be a social construct. It's not what philosophers are saying. Look, there's a great question in science, okay? This is from 2357. Okay, this is a question. He's asking, look, can't morality just be an advantage, an evolutionary advantage? Can't be an emergent property. What's an emergent property? An emergent property is a projection of the mind. Okay, so imagine you're at a baseball game and people start doing the wave. And you're looking at the stands and you're like, hey, there's a wave. The wave is an emergent property. There is no wave. The wave is really just people standing up, and your mind sees a wave. It projects a wave, but it's not really a wave. It's just people standing up. Like, for instance, you look at a forest, like, here, there's a forest. A forest is just a number of trees. Okay, I'm not going to dissect this one because I've done it in the past. We'll talk about it again in the future. An emergent property is something, according to Kant and many great thinkers, it's a projection of the mind. Now, he's saying, isn't morality a projection of the mind? Well, mind, by the way, Mr. 2357, mind is not known by science. Okay, look up hard problem of consciousness. There is no scientific evidence for mind. None. Zero. Nada. Zilch. Our scientific instruments have never detected mind. The only reason you know you have a mind is because you're having a direct experience of mind, period. Nobody ever used logic to deduce mind, and nobody ever grasped or put mind in a test tube. Nobody ever detected mind. As a matter of fact, if you were a zombie and you had no mind, you wouldn't know anything about mind. Okay? I'm not going to go about in detail about this because I've talked about it in the past, but believe me, it's called a hard problem of consciousness. We have no idea about mind. So, where does morality fit in? Is morality found in a test tube? No. Is it an advantage for a particular group? Yes, I agree with you. It's an advantage. However, it is detected. Morality is detected. How is it detected? First-hand experience. The same way you detect mind is the same way we detect morality. For instance, if I see somebody do something horrible, I have a sensation inside me that says, hey, that's bad. I have an inner state. I'm feeling morality directly. Okay? Now, before you reject this, just try to first listen to what I'm saying. Scientists ask, is there some special matter in the universe? Or is all matter the same? Think about this. Okay? It's a very philosophers of science always ask this question. Is there a special matter? Or is it all the table of elements? There's no matter out there that's like supernatural. And their answer is overwhelmingly no. There is no special matter. Okay, now think about matter for a second, Mr. 2357. Okay, matter, first, was just Newtonian. What's Newtonian? Meaning the laws of motion. Matter was bouncing around in an empty universe. Not empty, but you get what I'm saying. In a large, vast universe. As Epicurus would say, the matter and the void. Just chaos. And then that matter went through a very special something. Nobody knows what it happened. But at one point, matter went from being Newtonian and it did something very special. It did something crazy. Matter started to move itself. What point did matter start to move itself? Now it came to life. Now we have biology. We have Darwin, as my friend here likes to put. Okay, now it's all about who's the fittest or fit enough to survive. Life is replicating itself. It has a metabolism, etc. You know, they don't have an exact definition for life, but they have in a gray area. But one point, we have also, after Darwin, we have volition. Volition. Now, I'm matter. I obey, my body obeys the laws of Newton. That's determinism. Not going to go in that today. We've done it so many times, but my body obeys the laws of physics. It obeys the laws of Newton. They can predict where the matter of my body is going to be 10 years from now, even though they don't know what decisions I'm going to make. However, at the same time, I'm a compatibilist. I believe that determinism and free will is possible. But just to keep things simple for those of you who are more new to the topic, first matter was bouncing around in a vast universe, and then it became life somehow. Nobody has an explanation for this. Believe me, nobody. It's called biogenesis. How non-living matter became living, started to replicate itself. Then not only is it replicating itself, but now matter is moving itself. Now we're at a higher tier. That matter, those rocks, those sticks and stones, so to speak, because remember we said that there's no special matter. Philosophers of science are telling us, look, there is no magic matter. It's all matter. The matter in the human being and the matter in those stones over there. It's all technically the same. Okay? Not stones specifically, but matter, carbon. But the matter went through these phases. And another phase, even higher, Kant wonders, is like, this matter starts to see beauty. Oh, look at this beautiful stars, Kant says. Look at the starry sky above me. I'm having this experience of beauty. Now, first, I didn't move myself. I was bouncing around. Then it started to replicate. Matter started to replicate itself. Then it had volition. It started to decide whether it wants to go left or right, up or down. It started to decide things. And now it has this experience of beauty. So the problem is escalating. By the way, after Newton, like just hardcore science doesn't fit anymore. Darwin is just Darwin, the guy's evolution, Mr. 2357. Evolution itself is an emergent property. Can you do me a favor? I want you to go in your biology books. I want you to go into the most expert, most genius, who's the top G of Darwinian thought, and ask him, where is the evolutionary gene? Or where is the evolutionary mechanism? Where is the evolutionary mechanism? They're going to be like, there's no evolutionary mechanism. If you have the trait, you survive. If you don't have the trait, you die. Evolution is a projection of the mind. That's what you have to understand. The fact that you're saying that, isn't it just evolution? Evolution is also vapor, ghost, mist. It's also from the mind. That's the thing. That's what people don't understand. If you dissect a lamb, if you dissect any animal, any human being, you will not find a mechanical, and scientists, philosophers of science don't claim that there is one. They don't claim that there is one. That's very important to say. Scientists and biologists and evolutionary biologists, they're always talking about evolution like it's a thing, but it's not. And philosophers of science will tell you it's not a thing. It's an emergent property. We observe these patterns and then we give it a name, and that name is evolution. But that evolution is never directly experienced. It's happening. Evolution is an idea between your ears. Okay. Now I'm a nominalist. Okay. Nominalist, we pick out emergence left and right. We're all about it. A nominalist like myself, like Ghazali, we take emergence very seriously. Anything that's emergence, we say that comes from the mind. That's in a different realm. It's not in the observed world. It's never observed. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's not in the observed world. Now, philosophers have noticed that things that are observed in the world, anything you could see, taste, touch, smell, etc., anything about the senses, anything scientific instruments can detect, it completely corrodes. Okay, it goes through entropy. It will decay. Everything that's emergence, everything that's known by the mind, never decays. It's not subject to decay. That's also very interesting. Morality is eternal. There will always be right and wrong. There will always be mind. Mind is eternal. The mind that you have right now is eternal. Think about that. Every single thing that is known by the mind, i.e., is emergent, is not subject to entropy. Think about that later on in your quiet time. Now, I was escalating the problem, though. I'm not done with you, Mr. 2357. Sir, we still have to go even higher. We have to go even higher. So we started with matter was Newtonian. It was just bouncing around supposedly at random. Don't get me started on randomness because I'll talk your ear off. Okay, I talked about it on the Rogan show. That's another emergent property. Let's put that to bed for a second so I don't go on a tangent. Matter was obeying Newtonian law, and then it did something. We call it biogenesis. It started to replicate itself. I have no idea how. Nobody has any idea how. No scientist in the world knows how this process, how we went from Newtonian to replication. Nobody knows. Trust me, I've researched this thoroughly. There's no expert in the world that knows how it's done. Okay. Then, not only is it replicating itself, it has a metabolism, but now it has a volition. It decides whether it wants to tune into this podcast or go watch Netflix or go out get a bite to eat. It's moving. Matter is now moving itself. Mind blow. Again, I'm not going to go on a tangent, but we don't have too many mysteries here. Then, not only is it moving itself, it now thinks things are beautiful. It thinks things are sad. It has morality. It thinks things are right and wrong. Wow. And then we have another problem compounded onto that. It's called, I'm forgetting the name now. Give me a second. Oh, the problem of, hold on, I'm slipping my mind now. The problem of intention. Oh, let me Google that. Oh, sorry. The problem of intentionality. Okay. What's the problem of intentionality? My brain is matter. But my brain is thinking about a turkey sandwich I have in the fridge. My brain is matter. Think about that. My turkey sandwich in the fridge is matter. My brain is thinking about matter, is thinking about other matter. Where did that come from? Matter, my brain, or my mind, the biologists say, okay, the mind is a brain. It's thinking about something else. So matter now not only bounces around and obeys the laws of Newton, matter also thinks about other matter. This is a reduction ad absurdum. If I reduce atheistic, materialistic philosophy, it comes down to some type. You can't escape some type of woo. That's how I was trying to, when I was on the Rogan show, I was like, look, there's woo in every philosophy. At one point, you have to incorporate some type of supernatural. When I say supernatural, I mean something beyond the laws of physics, sight, taste, touch, smell, empiricism. It goes beyond matter and chemistry. Matter and chemistry, atheistic philosophy, matter and chemistry, and believe me, I can bring you even worse problems than that. Because matter, Mr. 2357, is also emergent property. There is no such thing as matter out in the real world. All you ever see is subjective elements. I've talked about Berkeley's triangle one too many times. I talked about a Rogan show. This goes back to George Berkeley, Idealism. It's also an emergent property. Guys, if you're going to call morality an emergent property, you must remain consistent. Everything that is an emergent property, wipe it off the table. What's left? What's left? Now, can you go that far? Because most scientists, when I take them by the hand and I kind of show them, here's an emergent property, take it out. Here's another emergent property, take it out. They're like, oh, I can't go down this road. They like have a psychological reaction. But I was like, wait a second, you told me this and that is emergent property. Okay, let's take out, let's be consistent. Let's take everything that's emergent property and put it in its basket here and see what's left in the world. You want to know what's left in the world? This. Now, to a trained mind, if you understand how everything is eventually emergent property, there's actually, after you've removed everything, and when I say there's this, nothing, zero, I'm talking about everything worldly. There's only one thing left, okay? That's why in Islam, the highest levels of Muslim Islamic thinking, that's what happens. That's the whole end game, is that eventually you realize that there is nothing on the table. It's all emergent property, and there's only this one thing left. And this one thing left is the divine, God. God is not an emergent property. God is not an emergent property. That's the whole, guys, if Islam was a pyramid, the top of the pyramid would be that. That's it. That's what the whole journey is about at the end. But can I take a person there? Yeah, it takes a long time. It takes a lot of talking, a lot of speaking. You have to see everything is ultimately an emergent property. Now, I'm going to put it in a nutshell for you so you could do it for yourself. I'm going to put it in a nutshell, and then you will find an emergent property in every single philosophy, belief system, etc. And you will understand what mysticism is about. Okay? I like to put it in a nutshell. I like to make things simple. I like to make my calling card as I can take complex ideas and make them simple. Here it is. Here's my try to make this simple. And this is not an easy thing to make simple. Okay? We're going to talk about the ship of Theseus. Guys, we will talk about the ship of Theseus for 20 years. And every time we talk about it, we're going to learn something new. And we're going to scratch the surface and we're going to get a little deeper. The ship of Theseus is a ship with 99 parts. Every day the ship chucks one part. It needs every day a new part needs a repair. You have 99 parts. On day one, we repair one piece. So you had 99 original parts. I removed one. Now you have 98 original parts and one brand new part. On day two, we take out another piece that's corroding. We put a new piece. Now you have 97 new pieces. Original, and 2 new pieces. And we continue. After 99 days, the ship of Theseus has no original pieces. Now, the ship of Theseus, we're still calling it the ship of Theseus. Oh, there goes Theseus' ship, and you're sailing around the world, and you're doing all these activities on the ship, and everybody refers to it as the ship of Theseus. Now, all those pieces are replaced. I had them in a warehouse somewhere. I take them, I reassemble them. Now I put it back on the water. It doesn't run great, but it runs. And now you have 2 ships that claim to be the ship of Theseus. And I ask you, which one is the ship of Theseus? And if you're a philosopher and you're going to think about it really hard, you're going to be like, well, that's relative. they're both kind of the ship of thesis, and they're both kind of not the ship of thesis. And you realize that the ship of thesis is really an emergent property. All there are is parts. And when you shuffle those parts around, you can name it in different ways, and that's relative. And that's an emergent property. There's no ship of thesis out there. The ship of thesis is something in here. It's an idea in your head. And then you realize, hey, my whole body is the ship of thesis. As I grew older, my body replaced, through the foods you eat, etc., replaced every single cell in my body. But there's a continuity. If I show you a picture of Coach Zahabi when he's 5 years old, you don't say, hey, that's not Coach Zahabi. Coach Zahabi is 5'10". This baby is not 5'10". You're like, wait a second. No, Coach Zahabi went through phases. He's part material, but he's also concept. There's a concept that follows me. It's all how you interpret. Some philosophers say, look, I'm not this same person I was last year. Nope, I'm a totally different person. Like literally, they try to say, look, if I committed a crime 365 days ago, I don't consider myself to be the same person. I should not be guilty of that crime. Poor argument. I personally don't agree with it. But you get my point, is human beings are part body and we are part concept / emergence. Everything has a touch of emergence. Now, emergence is a touch of subjectivity. If something has a touch of subjectivity, and believe me, I can find a touch of subjectivity in everything. You have to have a very trained mind, but believe me, we could turn anything and give it a touch of subjectivity. Believe me when I tell you this. It's not easy, but believe me, we could take you there. Philosophers can't take you there. Except one thing. Now, imagine I'm going to have a new ship of thesis. This ship of thesis has no parts. It's all made of one part. The ship of thesis was never assembled. This divine, I'm going to call it the divine ship of thesis, was never assembled. It'll never decay. It doesn't go through phases. It's beyond time and space, etc. There's no subjective element. Now remember, in the worldly ship of thesis, when I told you which one is the ship of thesis, I had two ships. You're like, well, it's all relative. It's all emergence. You realize you thought about it. You're like, hey, it's all how you see things. It could be seen different ways. They're equally logical. But not when it comes to the divine ship of thesis. The divine ship of thesis was never assembled. It will never be dissembled. It doesn't require repair. It doesn't change. There's no other ship like it. That's also very important. There's a lot of criteria. It never came to be. It always was. All of a sudden, now we have perfect objectivity. Now we could say that is true, it is objective, and it doesn't matter if anybody's opinion. Now there's no subjectivity. That's what it would take for something to be truly objective. For something to be truly 100% objective. This is what 99% of people don't understand. For something to be true, perfectly true, true it in the highest regard, it would have to be God. That's why one of the names of God in Islam is Al-Haq, the truth. After God is only falsehood. Meaning there's always a subjective element. Everything in the existence has subjectivity, save God. Now, let's say you don't believe that. Then you don't believe in truth. Everything is relative. You've now fallen into sophistry. I can't see it any other way. How could we have anything perfectly true? Even if you tell me 2 + 2 = 4, that's still, believe me when I tell you, is still not objectively true. It's true. I consider it to be objectively true. It's not perfectly objectively true. And it has to do with the fact that it's a tautology. It doesn't bring any new information. And also, philosophers of mathematics don't know if mathematics is only happening in our heads. Is it all emergent property, or is it actually out there in the world? Not an easy thing to understand. It has a lot to do with idealism. But ultimately speaking, is it A, just a tautology? And 2, does it go beyond what we have between our two ears? These are very deep philosophical questions that take years to master. But ultimately speaking, you're drawing the line at emergent property only at morality. We can keep going. But here's the thing. You're having a direct experience of morality. To go back to answer your question. When you see something happening and you think it's evil, it's wrong. If it's just an emergent property, that means that's subjective. It's not true. So I can go around and do the most heinous thing. Think of the most heinous thing. Gas chambers, rape, murder, torture. If it's true what you're saying, if it's an emergent property, then you'd have to look me in the eye and say, look, that's just matter being moved around. There's no morality. That's just an emergent property. Those little babies screaming, those women screaming for help, those people who are being burned alive. Nothing wrong there. There's something deeply, there's something within. Just because it's known intuitively doesn't make it untrue. Actually, it's the opposite. Intuition is the most powerful, most certain thing we know. It's the most certain type of knowledge we have. If it's an emergent property, I wouldn't have a direct experience of it if it wasn't real. Now, because people now have redefined, it's a false equivocation. People think what is true is what we see in the world, what we can measure with our instruments. That is not a complete definition of truth. Okay, George Berkeley said, "Esse percipi." To be is to be perceived. If something is perceived, it must exist. You cannot perceive non-existence. If something didn't exist, look, he's totally right about this. Think about it. If something doesn't exist, you cannot perceive it. How could you even talk about it? How could you mention it? Okay. Something, for it to be mentioned, has to exist. Even Santa Claus. If you look at all the elements that make up Santa Claus, they all exist. Men exist, reindeer exist, sleighs exist, flight exists. When you bundle them all together, okay, Santa Claus or flying reindeer don't exist, but all the elements exist. You can't talk about things that don't exist. You can only combine things. I've talked about this in the past. I'm not going to go on a tangent today about it, but we can only make collages of things that do exist. And by making a collage, we can invent something that doesn't exist. But all the elements in that collage do definitely exist. If something is perceived, if I perceive morality, morality exists. That's all I need to know about morality. Name me one thing I perceive that's not true. Now, there are optical illusions, for instance. For instance, let's say, okay, most famous optical illusion, the sun goes around the earth. That was not an intuitive experience. That was a deduction. You had an experience and then you deduce from that experience. That's why deduction is never... There's different types of logic, okay? We have induction, deduction, abduction, and intuition. Intuition doesn't tell us the sun goes around the earth. No, that's a deduction. Deductive logic. There's a difference between deductive and inductive and intuitive logic. Intuitive logic is I stub my toe and it hurts. The it hurts part is intuitive. I can't be wrong that it hurts. Okay, so I often give an example to people. Imagine I'm sleeping in my bed, and while I'm sleeping, my wife, she rearranges the furniture. I come downstairs into the living room and I stub my toe on what I think is the chair. But really it's the coffee table, because where I stubbed my toe is where the chair was, but my wife switched the chair with the coffee table. I made a deduction that it's the chair. Deduction can be wrong. But the fact that it hurts, that's known intuitively. It's an intuitive logic. Okay. That I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong about the pain. Okay, that's very, very important. Okay, we can have an optical illusion, but the direct experience is known directly. Not the deduction of the source. The source of the experience, you can be wrong, but not the experience itself. Very important detail. Very important. A very important. I don't want to call it a detail, okay, but a very important element that you must differentiate. Okay, there's the source of that experience and the experience itself. There's a differentiation there. Bone Hunter, $99. You are a scholar and a gentleman. Wow. Hello, I'm 5 months post-op from ACL reconstruction. Training partners did a move similar to Kani Basami. Oof, guys, for those of you who don't know what Kani Basami is when somebody jumps a flying scissor. Forbidden in the practice room. You just sent the man to a 1-year recovery, man. 1 year it takes to come back from ACL. One little move you didn't practice, the guy's got a year of his life taken away from him. Goodness gracious. My question is, how did GSP keep from re-tearing his ACL 10 plus years after his reconstruction? Are there any variables that changed in his training? James, I want to break the sad story to you. He did break his other ACL. He did. Guys, I'm not going to go too far into this, but James, my heart goes out to you. Listen, George broke his ACL, and then they told us about 2 years later, people break their second ACL. And they were like, oh, because we can't calibrate the knees perfectly. It's very difficult. And one knee overcompensates for a while. Then you're never moving mechanically the same again. The other knee overcompensates, it blows out. We had this information. I had this information. I got the best guys in the world. That's how I got so obsessed with knees. I'm like, I'm the guy who's not going to let his knee pop after 2 years. Because they're saying, not that everybody breaks their knee after 2 years, but there's a high rate of breaking your second knee. The good knee. Guys, it's the good knee that pops. Now, 2 years later, right around 2 years, he's a wrestling practice. He calls me after. He's like, you won't believe it. I'm like, what? Don't tell me. He's like, I was defending a single leg, and the leg I was standing on, the good knee, popped. And I was like, oh, man. Dude, Dana White called me. He wasn't happy. He's like, I had to schedule the prime time. Like, they were doing a recording about George's training, and they called me and they're like, we want to know your schedule, where you're going to be, where you're going to do. And he had just popped his knee. Okay. And then we had his MRI done, and we weren't sure if it's popped. So we wanted to take it to another doctor who doesn't know it's GSP's knee, because, you know, maybe the doctor's going to tell us. And I read that back then, you know, we're getting ready for a title fight, guys. We don't want to miss this title fight. There's a lot of money on the line. There's a lot of going on here. We have to show up on fight day. Things like, is his knee really broken? So we took the MRI and we're like, let's get a second opinion. Show it to a doctor who doesn't know it's GSP. Maybe the other doctor, the first doctor, just wants to operate on GSP, because for him, it's like, I fixed GSP's knee, you know, like it's like doctors sometimes, you know, they like to tell us who famous people they worked on. Anyways, in that 1 hour, I get a call from Dana. It's like, hey, why aren't you scheduling? I'm like, Dana, man, you won't believe it, but we just did his MRI. He popped his knee. We had him in an MRI machine. Not long after, we're trying to find out, like, is it really popped? It's very possible. He feels his knee is loose, but we don't know. Like, is it his imagination? Is he like, freaking out that his knee's popped? You know, is it emotional? Anyways, we did our best. Like, in 24 hours, 48 hours, we wanted to know, is that ACL broken? And it was. The second ACL broke. Now, we had another long journey, about a year. Like, I'm talking about, man, it's a long journey, ACL tear. Man, I did a deep dive on knees, experts, talking to them. I had another athlete, also really good prospect, did the same thing. Broke one ACL, then broke the other. 2 years later, it's just such a nightmare. The ACL tear, man. Look, I don't want, sorry, man. I don't want to put you down. You can come back from it. His knees are fine now. The other athlete I mentioned too, he's rolling every day. His knees are fine. Guys, you will come back from it. I promise you. It's a very routine surgery nowadays. There's a lot to know about knees. I personally think the prehab is the best. Do strong and stable knees, guys. It's the best system. Today I finished my workout standing on the stability ball, solid as a rock, going up and down, squatting up and down on it, just chilling. I did 5 minutes straight. It's 5 minutes to keep your knees alive, man. I roll twice a day, almost every single day. I kickball. I have not, thank God, and I hope I don't break my ACLs. But I'm turning 44 very soon. 44 years old. I'm wrestling. Guys are trying to take me down, sweeps, twists, and I'm in the wrestling practice. I'm rolling. Thank God, man, my knees. I train sensibly too. I don't train like a cowboy. You know, I train very sensibly. I try to always be careful, work in a margin of safety. I never try to push it like, you know, I never get into a rocky fight at the gym, you know, like I train sensibly. But things get intense in the practice room, and, you know, you could always, any day you could slip, fall, break your leg. I mean, you can't prevent 100% injury, right? But thank goodness, this routine, I swear by it. I think it's the best. And It doesn't exist because physiotherapy, prehab, rehab, they won't do something so extreme. And I don't find it to be extreme. I think wrestling is extreme. So your stability training should be higher. You know, I'm a big believer in working in the margin of safety. If my sport requires an 8 on 10 in stability, I better be a 9.5 in stability. I need that cushion. If I don't have that cushion, it's a matter of time before my 7 on 10 stability breaks. Why? Because I needed an 8 to survive this exchange, and I didn't have an 8 in my pocket. I had a 7. I had good stability, not great. I'm a big believer in stability training. 44 years old, going on 44, and rolling every day. And the most brutal, like I have a leg locking gym. You know, they're leg locking monsters. So I just got caught in a heel hook the other day. My partner popped my ankle. I didn't miss a second of training, man. I rolled right after. We continued rolling. Like, I'm fine. I put an ankle brace on it. And today I rolled twice. I rolled in the AM. I rolled in the PM. I wrestled. I just put an ankle brace. I'm fully stable. I stood on the stability ball after. I'm recovering my ankle. I'll be fine. I'm not worried about my ankle. My knee got a little bit, feels a little bit. I'm not worried about it at all. I have a margin of safety to work with. I have a margin of safety, guys. Margin of safety. When you train, I don't care if you're doing weights. I don't care if you're doing boxing. I don't care if you're doing judo. I don't care if you're doing football. Always in the practice room, a margin of safety. And things like Kani Basami shouldn't be happening in the practice room. Go talk to your trainer. It's banned in the practice room. We can drill it and do it in competition, but we never do it in the practice room. And this is a movement only brown belts and black belts should drill. Any other belts lower than that, you should be doing things more basic. Don't do fancy Kani Basamis. You don't need it. It's just going to injure somebody. You need somebody to give you a synopsis on the Ian Garry situation. Oh my God, guys, you guys are obsessed with Ian Garry. Okay, Ian Garry. What's happening with my boy Ian Garry? Ian Garry. Oh my God. Brandon Allen accuses former teammate Ian Garry of selling your soul to the devil for money. Oh my God, man. What's going on with this guy? Okay. Garry has conducted himself since leaving Killcliff. Okay, he left Killcliff. I heard that he was kicked out from Leon Edwards' gym as well. I think it's really expletive move to leave the gym and then literally ask for or somehow. Oh my God, what is it? Oh, personal feeling. Oh my God, what is this drama, man? This is a romance novel I'm reading, guys. It's a romance novel. Play persona like Kobe does. Okay, he's trying to play the persona like Kobe does. What did he say or do? Goodness gracious. What he perceived to be Edwards' insecurities. The gym responded shortly afterwards. Oh my Lord, look at this drama, man. Drama. Machado Garry's more nomadic approach to preparation has given him great results, but it's not in line with what we are creating at the Team Renegade. Okay, so he's bouncing around from different gyms. Just know that their videos also know that. What? But I just know that there's someone in the gym that has slept him out. So he's been knocked out in the gym, they're saying, and they're going to show the video possibly, if not. So for him to come and say that everyone knows how good he is, striking how good he is, and there is... oh my God, this is torture, guys. I can't believe you're making me do this. Dude, there's no substance to this. Okay, he got into a beef. From what I understand, he thinks he's really, really good. He's telling the guys he's the best, etc. Somebody slept him. They think, oh, I can show that he's not the best, etc. Guys, so what? He got slept in practice. It can happen. Sure, maybe he was trying on new things. You got to beat him in a fight, a real fight. All right, let's see this. Ian Garry's wife reaction. Goodness gracious, man.
Good morning.
There's been a lot of shit being said online about me, my family, my personal life. All of it's fucking nuts. So my wife decided to clap back a little bit, give some truth to the story, and yeah. So look, my wife is the most intelligent person I've ever met. That's why I married her. That's why I fell in love with her. She's fucking awesome. Now, if you think you're gonna talk about me or my kids or my team or my family, and me and her are not clap back, then you're fucking nuts. Listen to what she has to say.
So, some content creators and MMA media are having a fucking field day on my private life, and seeming as content creation is, you're not the only ones that make content. I thought we'll have a little chat about this. Let's have a little talk about it, because this ain't my first rodeo. Let's start with some self-defamation, things that I've done, things that are accounted truthfully to me, and then what we'll do is we'll get on to the lies, like this crazy shit. Looking at the hate, the majority of the clips and the comments that I'm getting, without a doubt, the biggest thing that I've done wrong is age. I've gotten older, I've had a birthday every year, and that's fucking disgusting coming from a woman, especially. Getting older is not acceptable, so I'm a little bit, I fucked up there. I'm 40, and to people who haven't met me and are sat at home, that's really disturbing to them. They're really very upset about it and spending a great deal of time telling me how horrendous it is that I'm 40. Another thing that I did is that I dated someone almost 14 years younger than me. Actually, didn't just date him, married him, Ian. And that has really deeply shocked some people. It's shocked them so much that it's definitely not laced with sexism. It's affected their thoughts on everyone in the industry, including males who are dating females of the exact same age gap. They've definitely been.
Guys, you're killing me with this drama. Guys, you guys find this interesting? Really? Look, so what? She's older than him. Honestly, I couldn't care less. So what? Anyways, I'm sure there's a lot more to the story, but this is really boring. I'm just completely not interested in this, guys. What can I tell you? If somebody has a better video of something that actually happened, so what? She's older than him. Honestly, I couldn't care less. He's 14 years younger. If he wants to marry her, he's a big boy. He can marry who he wants. Hello, I'm 5 months, but okay, we did that one. I agree, it's all emergence, including moral revulsion and intuition. We could replicate the behavior of our neurons with trillions of gears, and it would be conscious. Oh, with trillions of gears, like you mean mechanical gears. Okay, guys, we're 2357 is clapping back, as Miss Machado would say. And I just don't think there's a parallel train, as you've said. Okay, so I'm going to reread that carefully here. Let me put on the brightness here. I agree, it's all emergence, including moral revulsion and intuition. We could replicate the behavior of our neurons with trillions of gears, and it would be conscious. That's a major crazy ontological leap. You have no proof of this whatsoever, Mr. 2357. I guarantee you that right now that is an incorrect statement. He's saying, guys, I can make a machine so, this is called hiding behind complexity. I make a machine so complicated, it's going to Frankenstein to life. You don't know that. That's just how come my computer doesn't come to life? Are you saying, oh, it's not complicated enough? Wait till we add more gears, trillions and gazillions of gears. Okay, once we add more and more gears, all of a sudden, it's going to become Frankenstein. It's going to change it ontologically. Ontologically means have a completely different nature. That's completely wrong. That is completely wrong. Okay, let me explain to you this, okay? Think about a vending machine. I push A7. There's a computer inside the vending machine. The computer gets a pulse, gets an electrical current, and the electrical current says, if this, then that. Okay, I'm putting it into words. If you get an electrical current from this pattern, send it this way. And then it'll spiral A7, and A7 will give me a Twix. I pushed A7. The computer inside says, if this, then that. If this current of electricity, send out this current of electricity. And that's all it does. Okay, so 2357, an even better example of this is the Chinese room. okay? The first computers, guys, were human beings, okay? A computer was somebody who computes. He looks at a list of instructions and he follows them. That's it. That's what a computer is. The first computers were humans. Then we said, hey, with currents of electricity, we can turn computers, we can make machines into computers. We don't need to use humans anymore. I'm sitting in a room. There's a slit in the room. Okay, it's a famous thought experiment. And I receive a message. The message is in Chinese. I look at the characters. I look in my manual. It says, if you get these characters, send out these other characters. That's it. If this, then that. If this. So I take the characters that correspond with what I received and I hand it out to the guy on the other side of the wall. I have a little slit. We don't see each other. And me and him are having a complicated Chinese, very complicated. You said trillions. I got trillions of if this, then that in my algorithm. He gives me more Chinese letters. I look at them and I said, okay, if you get this, then that. I go and I reach out. I take the correct reply, if this, then that, and I give it to him. Now, this guy thinks he's talking to his old war buddy. Then he opens the door and he's like, hey, how are you? And he's talking to me in Chinese. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't speak Chinese. He's like, what are you talking about? You know, I've just been talking to you for hours. I was just doing if this, then that. Every time you gave me a letter, I read it. I looked at the Chinese characters and I gave you the corresponding response. I don't speak Chinese. Imagine I had a translator at this point. Okay, guys, don't nitpick on my examples. Just make it work. Okay, philosophers, we make it work. We get that. Well, coach, how could you be talking to him? Because he's trying. Yes, some magical somebody came in and translated for us. Okay, there was an interpreter between me and him. He was telling the interpreter, hey, I thought he was my Chinese war buddy. And he's like, he turns around and looks at me and says, hey, he says you thought you were a Chinese war buddy. I'm not your Chinese war buddy. I was just following the manual. Now, what you're saying is, if we made the manual really, 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 really complicated, now you'd know how to speak Chinese. No, I don't speak Chinese. I'm just following orders. I'm just computing. You know, if you made a computer the size of a galaxy, it still would not become conscious. Okay? Look at this. Listen to this. Okay? Hello, Siri. How are you? Hey, Siri. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks.
Is Siri human? I want to ask you a question. No, 2357. You're trying to tell me Siri's not complicated enough. Siri is programmed. If somebody tells you, hey, Siri, how are you? Then reply. Oh, see, Siri's answering me now. Hold on a second. I got to shut her off. If my phone robot receives a command, and here's like, if this, then that. That's all it's doing. Now you're saying, oh, what if we add a gazillion microchips? It wouldn't make a difference. You know, I had one time a philosopher, he was in computers, and he was telling me, look, this is his explanation on mine. He's like, look, computers is like you're opening and closing a valve. Imagine I had pipes, and I was flowing water through those pipes, and he had valves that turn them off, turn them on. That's what computing does, except we're not using water. We're using currents of electricity. That's really what it is. We're turning off valves on and off, and it's all if this, then that. You're hiding behind complexity. If there was... Let me give you another example, Mr. 2357, okay? Because you really have not yet immersed yourself in emergence. Suppose I'm a ventriloquist. I have a puppet on my hand, and I'm entertaining a group of kids. And me and that puppet are having a dialogue, and the kids are laughing, and they're smiling, and they're having a good time, and they think that puppet has an attitude problem. And I'm arguing with the puppet, and he's arguing, and we're making a skit where he has like a bad boy attitude. And they think the puppet is talking. They think the puppet is real. And you're saying that, no, well, if I add more colors and more bricolage to the puppet, if I made the puppet more, if I gave the puppet robot like camera eyes, and like if I made, no matter how much you complicate the puppet, it's still a puppet. It's all emergence. Those kids, it's a ventriloquist act. It's a ventriloquist act. It's all a ventriloquist act. Those kids think the puppet is really talking. They think the puppet has a mind. It doesn't have a mind. They're projecting their minds onto that puppet. You're projecting your mind onto Siri. It's all emergence. Don't you understand? Consciousness doesn't emerge from material property. Material properties emerged from consciousness. It's the other way around. This is what I call Copernicus all over again. Like man figured out that it's not the sun going around the earth. One day, 2357, you're going to realize that consciousness, matter emerged from consciousness, because even matter, that's what you didn't understand from my earlier comments, Mr. 2357, matter itself is an emergent property. It also comes from mind. It's all mind. Very difficult thing to wrap your mind around, but when I tell you that everything originates from mind, not my mind, not your mind, the mind, it's all an emergent property. Let me give you one last example, Mr. 2357, just because I really want you to one day hopefully grasp. Imagine me and you, grant me this premise, we're in a dream together. Just grant me that premise for now, just so we can make an analogy. And I'm in the dream and you're in the dream, and I'm like, look, it's all mind in here, man. But you're like, wait a second, look at this computer. This computer, if I make it really sophisticated AI, it's gonna emerge into, it's gonna have its own mind. I'm like, no, I'm sure I understand. The whole computer, it's all mind. All the buttons, that's just pattern and regularity. There is no matter. There is no computer. There is no rock. The rock is also mind. It's all mind. Don't you understand? It's all emergence. The dreamer is the only thing that's not emergence. And you're like, what are you talking about? Don't you understand? Look, if I boil water to 100 degrees Celsius under this atmospheric pressure, you're going to have this reaction. Yes, I know that. I see it too. I totally get it. All the patterns and regularities around us, I get it. I get it. But you don't get that puppet on a hand there that is fooling those kids. You're being fooled the same way. You're seeing patterns and irregularities, and you think if they're complicated enough, this magical mist comes out. No, there's no magical mist. Don't you understand? You're projecting it. You are mind. This is hard to wrap our mind around, guys. I know I sound a little crazy, but this is idealism, okay? It ultimately boils down to this. That's what we know. Idealism is considered irrefutable. Tell me that about any other philosophy, worldview, logical worldview, about looking at the world. Now, for the Muslims who object, we should read the classical Muslims, okay, what they said first, before you object to me. They were not only were the idealists, they were occasionalists. They were occasionalists, okay? Occasionalism is like, occasionalism takes away every contradiction we have. Like occasionalism, it's kind of hard to explain because there's so many paradoxes in logic and materialist worldviews. We philosophers, we think really hard and we cross-examine each other and we're like, wait a second, the going right and going left, both answers have to be wrong. We're in a paradox now. It doesn't make sense. We must have been on the wrong road the whole time. Let's go back and retrace our steps and go a different direction. It's a dead end. When you find a dead end, it's like it can't be correct. Occasionalism is really, it's a bit complicated, but literally it's too hard to explain. It's too hard to explain. I'd have to go on a full tangent. But believe me when I tell you, these worldviews have heavily been studied, and occasionalism and idealism are very similar, okay? Very incredibly similar. Oh, don't tell me I got another message from 20. Every message is $20. Poor guy. 2357. You're a gentleman and a scholar. Our brains are just computers made of carbon. A neuron only does if this and then that. It's not a matter of complexity. It's a thought experiment where the architecture of our neurons are perfectly replicated. Thanks. Great channel. Thank you, 2357. I really appreciate you. It doesn't have to cost you $20 each time. I don't know how. I feel bad that you spent so much. I hear what you're saying. Okay, I totally get what you're saying. Okay, I'm going to reread that again just so everybody gets it. Our brains are just computers made of carbon. A neuron only does if this, then that. It's not a matter of complexity. It's a thought experiment where the architecture of our neurons are perfectly replicated. Okay, so he's saying, look, if I made a robot exactly like how your brains work, I think this is what you're saying. Excuse me. I don't want to. This is how I took it first. Now I'm thinking maybe it's not exactly what you're saying. But if I'm getting this right, you're saying if I replicated the human brain exactly, it's just carbon like everything else. And the if this then that is happening, then also be consciousness. I don't agree. No, I don't agree. I don't agree. I think it's completely wrong. I think you got it backwards. Just like people thought the sun was going around the earth, you think the sun's going around the earth. It's actually the earth going around the sun. It's the other way. Look, I really recommend you study idealism. And idealism is just scratching the surface. It's not deep. Idealism is the start. It's the start. There's much higher. There's much further. But don't do it for monetary incentives. Like, it's just a personal journey. It's just an amazing, like, you look at the world around you and it's like, wow. It's like watching the greatest movie or hearing the greatest story you've ever heard. That's what it is. That's really what it is. And yes, it's a life-changing, definitely, but it's not something you could share with people. It's, unless people had that journey themselves, it's not something you can share with. That's the thing, is you're marooned. There's so few people who go this far. Okay. But you're wrong about that, my friend. And I kind of touched on why. It's not all neurons. It's not. Neurons are also an emergent property. Think of 2357. Think of Berkeley's triangle. I know I've talked about it too many times. But imagine a triangle without a color. You can't. Color is subjective. If I take away the subjectivity of that triangle, there's nothing left. Neurons are the same. It's all coming from the mind. Neurons are also projections of the mind, just like Siri, just like everything. The good news is that the mind cannot erode. The mind does not erode. And there are other problems with your claim, okay? Because, man, you're making an ontological leap. You're saying, if something is mechanically identical to me, it'll have the same internal experience. How do you know that? How do you know? Okay, let me give you for instance. Okay, let's say I take my cell phone. Okay, and I replicate an exact cell phone. But that cell phone doesn't make calls. Why? I didn't connect to the tower. I didn't call TELUS and say, hey, I need to do a plan. I didn't connect it to that tower. There's a foreign element being projected to this phone. I don't see that element. I can't grasp it. It's ontologically different than this physical. Well, it's technically different than this physical phone. The identical phone doesn't do the same thing. It's the other phone doesn't make calls. It doesn't have a data plan. How do you know that reconstruct? Not only is the actual matter emergence, you have that problem. Just like the brain, when I was telling you, let's pretend we're sharing a dream. And I'm telling you, look, it's all mind. And you're like, no, look, I have a cell phone in my hand. I'm like, no, that cell phone is just more mind. It's just more subjectivity. It could have been otherwise. And you're like, no, I have it. I'm holding it in my hand. I could feel it. That's just sensation. That's sensation happening in the mind. You never go outside the mind. In philosophy, we call this the egocentric predicament. It's often referred to as that. But still, you have a compound problem. Would say, look, just like that phone, I recreated it, but it doesn't make calls. Well, you don't have a cell phone plan. There's more to it. There's more than meets the eye. It's not just that phone. All right, where we go. Can you mimic Francis Ngannou? That's from Jaco. I wish. Holy moly. What are your thoughts on Jefferson Curl exercise? That's from Hassan Haytham. Very interesting that you say that. Guys, Jefferson Curl is not good. Okay, if you guys don't know that, it's kind of like you're doing a toe touch, but with heavy weights. Guys, I don't want to get into a beef now, okay? But I don't recommend Jefferson Curl. I got into a huge beef with guys over knees over toes, and I was like, dude, that's not what I do. You know, like, if you guys want to do knees over toes, God bless you, man. Do knees over toes. I have knees over toes, but not for overload heavy weights. I don't do that, okay? Yes, you do knees over toes when you're running, when you're sprinting, when you're doing jiu-jitsu. I have a whole thing where you get plenty of knees over toes. Give your tendons a break. You don't need to overdo it. Now, then they started doing back videos, and they were telling me, look, he says do Jefferson Curl. Guys, if I'm getting this wrong, please correct me. But from what I understood, they were telling me he wants you to do Jefferson Curls for overload. So overload progression, you're getting heavier and heavier. Guys, we have scientific studies on Jefferson Curl. Guys, I always talk to you guys about Stuart McGill. Stuart McGill I've worked with a man personally. He has multiple studies showing that Jefferson Curl is a good stretch, a good warm-up, but don't do it for progressive overload. Why? I explained it in Strong and Stable Back. The lower spine should never flex past, I would say 10, 15 degrees max, and not under load, not for not for progressive overload. Progressive overload is you're really trying to go heavy. He took it in the lab. He tested it and he said, look, it creates compression in the spine, the lower spine. Guys, L4, L7, the most commonly injured vertebrae in the back. When you're doing Jefferson curl for progressive overload, they say it's okay for stretching and warming up. Light loads, very light loads. And I would tend to agree. I don't think you're going to break your back doing a Jefferson curl with a very light load. I think it's okay for a warm-up. I personally don't bend my back like that very often because I feel I get so much of it when I'm rolling. I don't need to do more. Okay? He says, Stuart McGill, with their studies, that Jefferson curl, and he has the most sophisticated back equipment. He's done the most... guys, for those of you who don't know who Stuart McGill is, he's the authority on backs. He's the authority on the back. He's done the most study and research on the human back. Then this crew came back and told me, yeah, but these studies are no good. Dude, are you kidding me? That's those are the, first of all, there's 3 different studies, and they're all using the top equipment, top research. And you're telling me some guy sitting in his basement thinking, guys, all of a sudden now you're telling me his science, Stuart McGill's science is wrong. And even Squat Academy, I forget his name, but he did a study on this. He did a video on this explaining Jefferson curl is bad for your back, progressive overload. And they were telling me, look, the science is wrong. I'm like, guys, what do you want me to tell you? Like, okay, the science is wrong. Stuart McGill's wrong. It's not impossible Stuart McGill is wrong. It could be that years from now they do another study and they're like, well, look, here was a flaw in his study. That's why he overlooked this or he missed it. I think Stuart McGill has no skin in the game. He doesn't care if Jefferson curl is good or not. If Jefferson curl tested positive, if it tested well in the test, he would tell the world about it. He doesn't care if you do Jefferson curl or not. He's just trying to tell you how not to wear out your back. He doesn't sell Jefferson curl equipment or anything. He has no skin in the game. His science, I think, is pristine. I can't believe that people question him. I find it absurd. That's the best we have. Science is never foolproof, no, but it's the best we have. And you're telling me now that we're going to copy this guy who just says it, he's a genius. He's a fitness genius. Okay, well, what's his evidence for this? What athletes has he trained? They're using Jefferson curl, and they made a massive difference in their game. What sport does he play that he's mastered that Jefferson curl makes such a difference? Guys, Jefferson curl for progressive overload, in my opinion, if you're asking me my opinion, that's all it is dangerous. Progressive overload. With a lightweight, it's okay. It's a good warm-up. I personally don't use it. I don't find that I need it. In jiu-jitsu, I'm always upside down. I'm always curling my back in the ball. I'm doing it all the time. I don't feel I need that range of motion. If you feel that you need to increase that range of motion, then when you get in these positions it's hurting you, you might want to use a way to slowly, gently increase your mobility. It is possible that you might need that. Shiz, my boy. Coach, remember when Tony escaped from 2 lethal submission, first against Charles Oliveira, the armbar, Tony never tapped. Second against Beneil Dariush, the footlock, Tony never tapped. That savage level. I agree with you. He's a savage, guys. He's a savage. A lot of guys would have tapped on that armbar and that footlock, guys. He is a savage, guys. I got to give it to Tony. He's a monster. Coach, thoracic spine is also good for shoulders. Coach, strong thoracic spine. Guys, I injured my thoracic spine not long ago. Herniated disc in my thoracic spine. Only 1% of people injure this part of their body. I get to be one of the lucky dummies who gets to do it. I shouldn't have been on the mat. I had a neck injury. I was injured. I warmed up. I wanted to wrestle. I knew I shouldn't wrestle. I didn't have my margin of safety. I just wanted to wrestle. Why? Because I'm a meathead. I want to wrestle. I don't feel good when I don't wrestle. I just felt like doing it. I wrestled. I got taken down. I landed in a weird way. I should not have been on the mat, guys. I should not have been. I was really injured on the neck. Like I had just a sprained neck. The sprained neck turned into a popped vertebrae. Why? The system was super tight. My neck was tight. My shoulder was tight. It was out of place. I should not have been on the mats. And like a dummy, I went and I wrestled standing. What a dumb move. The system was like this. I had no business being on the mat. I should have just done aerodyne, done a different workout. I'm stupid, guys. What can I tell you? If one of my fighters did that, I would give him an earful. I would tell him off. What are you doing? You have a sprained neck. Get off the mats. Don't roll. I broke my own rule. I paid the price, but I'm very happy to say that I've rehabilitated my thoracic spine. I'm much better. It was pain-free. And the good came out of it is I learned I learned about the crane I talked to you guys about. I added it on a strong and stable neck. Like I promised, I added it for free for anybody who has strong and stable neck. Go check it out. If you have any shoulder equipment that I use. And let me tell you, it saved my neck. Coach, what do you recommend to heal Crohn's naturally? That's from Theon. I'm not sure. I would probably research diet. I'm sure, guys, I'm not a Crohn's disease specialist, so I know George did it with diet as well. But I really recommend you talk to your doctor. I'm not going to give you any diet advice. I really, really, really recommend you sit with your doctor, do your research, tell your doctor about the research that you read, ask him about it, because some doctors might not be keeping up with the latest medical information. Find the leading experts on Crohn's disease and like write them emails, tell them about your progress and see if you can find somebody who is an expert in Crohn's disease that can help you. That's definitely not my domain. Coach, miss my super chat. Really? What time is it? 12:30, guys. We're going to end this one very shortly. Coach, are you a happy person? That's from Denzel. What do you think, guys? Okay, let's take a poll. Let's take a poll. Should we take a poll? Start a poll. Okay. Okay, guys, is Coach a happy person? I'm going to let that one stew and then I'm going to answer it. Is Coach a happy person? At TriStar Gym, there was $50 chat, but about ACL. Okay. I think I did that one, right? Is Jungian concept a shadow work or integrating the shadow a practice in Sufism or Islam? And if so, can you give examples, particularly integrating primal instincts? Is the Jungian concept of shadow work? Okay, I don't know what the Jungian concept of shadow work is. Jungian concept of shadow work. What on earth? Okay, let's look at this. Jungian, the shadow work workbook. What the shadow work meaning is as follows: working with your unconscious mind to uncover the parts of yourself that you repress and hide from yourself. This can include trauma or parts of your personality that you subconsciously consider undesirable. Anyone can do shadow work on their own. What did Jung, say about shadow work? However, Jung did not view shadow as a negative or shameful part of a person's personality. To him, it was an important part of their psyche. The goal of shadow work is to assimilate the shadow and the persona so that a person can learn how to manage impulse they usually ignore, such as anger and greed. Okay, you've piqued my interest. You've piqued my interest. Instead of talking about Ian Garry drama, we should be talking about shadow works. Shadow works. Shadow works. Complete guide to shadow works. Okay, let's see. I'm going to find a good resource on this. You've piqued my interest. The power of your dark side, Carl Jung. Okay, I'll use this to make sure I don't forget. Safe to watch later. Okay, so the Jungian. Okay, sorry, I misread that. The Jungian concept of shadow work or integrating your shadow work, your shadow, a practice in Sufism or Islam. I'd have to look it up. I'm not familiar with shadow work. Guys, I have like 2 or 3 books on Carl Jung. I haven't really gone through them. I've been meaning to study Carl Jung for many, many years. He's a legend in psychology, of course. I will get back to you, Terrence. Terrence, I want to tell you you're a gentleman and a scholar, and I appreciate you referring me to shadow work because it sounds very interesting, especially if it comes from Carl Jung. Coach, remember when... yes, I did that one. Anything else I forgot? What are your thoughts on Jefferson Curl? Our brains are... Look at Bob Sheldon's chat. What? If Hassan, I trust you. Okay. Bob Sheldon chat. What is Bob Sheldon? Oh, goodness. Look at Bob Sheldon's chat. Okay, I'm not sure what that means. Did Bob Sheldon write me is God objectively beautiful? That's from Ryan. Well, of course, but it would have to be divine beauty. It would be unimaginable beauty. Unimaginable beauty. Advice on when you feel like you're not improving. I've been doing Muay Thai for 9 months and feel like I haven't improved much in sparring, and people who are newer to sparring are getting the better of me. That's from Tristan Sheepers. I've seen that, okay? And I'll tell you something. Look, it could be your athleticism. Because no, people who just started off shouldn't be better than you. No, okay? It could be poor instruction, okay? So look, at A Man's Guide to Throwing a Punch, I talked to you about 3 elements. The warm-up, which I usually warm up with shadow boxing. Then there's a skills portion where you watch the video and you try to copy a skill. Okay, so let's say the video goes in order. Okay, so first is the most important skill, then the second most important skill, and third. So on day 1, you might just practice the first skill. And then day 2, you practice the first and second skill. Day 5, you're practicing 5 different skills. Day 10, you have 10 different skills to shadow and warm up with, and then work the bag. I show you how to work the bag, etc. Touch sparring, etc. And then it ends with conditioning. The third phase is conditioning. You might be skipping conditioning. Because I feel that if you don't develop your athleticism, look, your potential for being a good kickboxer has a lot to do with your athleticism. Athleticism has to be worked on every single session. I'll tell you what I did after practice today, okay? So today in the morning, I rolled. Then at night, I rolled and I wrestled standing. Okay, I did technique, rolled on the ground, warmed up on the ground, then I wrestled standing. Then I did a Airdyne circuit. Okay, so I did 20 calories on the Airdyne. 20. I love the Airdyne. I'm spiking my heart rate. Then 3 kettlebell jerks on the right hand, 3 kettlebell jerks on the left arm. So jerk, overhead jerk. Then 10 jump squats, 3 clap push-ups, 10 V-ups, so that's an ab exercise. That's 1 round. I did as many rounds as possible for 20 minutes. I'm developing my athleticism. I did cardio, I did shoulders, I did legs, I did more chest, then I did abs, and I just kept that circuit going for 20 minutes. I probably did I don't know how many rounds. Now, when I'm sparring, my athleticism to sprawl, shoot, kick, punch is developing. My rate of my ability to explode, my ability to block. Then after that, I finished with 5 minutes on the stability ball. Just standing on the stability ball to make sure my knees and hips and everything's super healthy. That portion I find people skip, and they're not creative in that portion. That portion is going to spike your body into developing new physical attributes, new athletic attributes. Because the thing is, if you just shadow box, if you just hit the bag, if you just do Muay Thai, your muscles will quickly adapt and plateau. But then I add Airdyne or sprints or rope climb or kettlebell or military type exercises, like circuit training with body weight or whatever it may be, row machine, whatever it is. It's all good stuff. Now your body's like, oh wait, I did kickboxing plus this brutal conditioning. The brutal conditioning is at a much higher calories per second. So my Airdyne, my clean and my kettlebell jerk, that circuit was at a higher athletic demand than my kickboxing. My kickboxing is more like I'm blocking your kicks, I'm punching, I'm countering, I'm playing a game. But my physique is not going to be as challenged as when I do the circuit. There's more calories per second burned. There's more intensity. There's more endurance demanded in that circuit. So then when I go back to kickboxing, throwing a kick is much simpler. My legs are much more developed than somebody who just kicks the bag, okay? Not only that, also you're recruiting muscles that didn't get a workout when you were doing Muay Thai. What I'm saying is one of those three phases is something's wrong with one of those three phases. Now, warming up, I find I like to warm up with shadow boxing because I'm doing so much technique that my technique is going to be flawless at one point. I'm slipping, throwing a counter punch. I'm blocking the teep and I'm countering him. I'm rehearsing my coordination, my movement, and then I'll do the higher intensity practice of skill. Okay, so now I'm going to do my drills. Okay, now I'm working the same moves, but a higher intensity. I'm hitting the bag, etc. But then I always finish with conditioning. Guys, so many people, I tell my students all the time that don't do conditioning. I tell them all the time, don't leave the gym without doing conditioning. Every jiu-jitsu club, every Muay Thai club should have basic, you don't need fancy equipment, should have basic fitness equipment. Kettlebell, barbell, pull-up bars, a dip station, row machine, I like stability ball. Of course, just mat space. You could do a whole routine just body weight, guys. You can get so much out of just body weight. But you have to do something. I would tell you like 60% of the practice room leaves without doing conditioning. It's crazy. Even in my competitors, even the guys who compete, yes, some of them take it more seriously. They do a conditioning routine, even some before practice, which I really think it's better to do it after practice because your body's warm, etc. And you don't want to get hurt. Like if you do conditioning, let's say 8 a.m. and then at 10 a.m. you're rolling, you can get injured because your muscles are temporarily weaker, right? Because they haven't gone through the recovery process. You need to go to sleep, rest, let the muscles recover. Now you're stronger. But after your 8 a.m. weight routine, circuit routine, you go to the 10 a.m. practice routine. Now somebody's got your leg, he's picking you up, throwing you on the ground. You're in an unstable position. You land on your elbow and your shoulder pops out. Well, guess what? Your shoulder is usually a 7 on 10 on strength. Today it was a 6. Why? Because you just fatigued it this morning. You did a lot of heavy sets and your shoulder's recovering. Then you roll around the practice room and I throw you up against the wall and your shoulder pops out. Well, guess what? Your shoulder was slightly unstable. Why? Because it lacking in strength. Why is it lacking in strength? Well, it didn't go through the recovery process. So I really recommend we do stable, like controlled training, high intensity after practice. I think one of these three elements is likely the culprit. Now, I didn't get to assess you, but it could be other problems. It could be also psychological. It could be so many things. But I would tell you, generally speaking, it's usually one of those three. Coach, as a hard gainer, what is the best way to gain size? That's some Khalid. I would tell you short sprints. You could use airdyne or running. If you have a treadmill, you could do short sprints. But I'm talking like not longer than 20 seconds. Warm up really good and then do short 20-second sprints. Take 40 seconds off. Like short, like explosive. If you can incline a treadmill upwards, that's really, really good. You're gonna gain a lot of size in your legs. Okay. If you could incorporate running on your toes just a little bit, don't run too much on your toes because you'll burn out your Achilles, but you'll massive calves, okay? People look at my calves, they're like, oh, your calves are massive. Yeah, I run on my toes. 20% of my workout is on my toes. Let's say I'm going to do a running routine. Let's say I'm going to run a mile. A quarter of that mile, usually about 20 to 25%, usually about 20 to 25% is going to be on my toes, and it's the later part. So I'll warm up 3/4 of the way, and then the last quarter I'll do on my toes. If you run on your toes, your calves will explode in growth. Okay, they'll explode in growth. Also, pedaling sprints on the airdyne or a pedal bike can really grow your calves and legs immensely. Okay, but of course, if you do long biking, you're gonna get skinny. If you want to get bulky, short, explosive, incorporate squatting. Squatting will add size to your frame, and diet. Okay, make sure you're getting. I recommend 1 gram of protein per gram of body weight, or 0.8 grams of protein per body weight, per pound of body weight. What do you think of Tony training with Goggins? That's from Ryan Mimosa. Don't tell me Tony Ferguson is training with Goggins, please. Please say it ain't so. Oh my God. Say it ain't so. Hold on. Oh, it is so. Hold on, let's hear this.
Are training together. Dave is not struggling at all, and Tony is struggling. There is
Training with Dave. What do you think about Tony training with David?
I don't know because we've never seen anybody train with David before. Clearly, when the two of them are training together, Dave is not struggling at all, and Tony is struggling. There is definitely some ground to gain when it comes to endurance. Dave is not even fucking tired. They're going side by side with each other. It's like, who's gonna carry the boats? You can just go for
He's an
days.
endurance athlete.
Right. So look at the two of them are doing that, and they're doing the workouts together. David looks like he's hanging out at fucking Planet Fitness trying to pick up a chick. Tony's dying.
I think he pukes here. One of these.
Yeah, he
one of these
puked.
videos.
David said that Tony was the first guy to get through Hell Week.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. So they're doing miles of lunges. Miles. And David's doing all this. Look at his knees.
Yeah.
Destroyed knees.
Yeah.
And this is just a few weeks after another fucking surgery.
He's such a stud.
He's an animal.
You know who hates him? Weak men.
Weak men and jealous men and people who don't know him. Instead of just look at the message that guy's saying. Take control. Take control of your life.
Guys, Tony Goggins is a beast. He's in shape, but it's not fight preparation per se. You know, like you have to go through as if he's helping him getting his endurance up. Yes, but Tony has to be doing fight preparation. He has to be in a wrestling room. He has to be in a grappling room. He has to be in a boxing gym. He has to be in a Muay Thai MMA club. You know, like he has to put on the gloves. Like I don't know how many weeks he has till this fight, but doing endless amounts of cardio is not necessarily the right way to get ready for a fight. You know, because I mean, fitness is super, super important, but also we have to go through the tapes. What was Tony doing wrong? Like when he was underneath Oliveira, he was doing this weird side control bottom position. I think he was trying to do like a buggy choke, not buggy choke, but some kind of variation of it. And it was backfiring totally. So I'd have to get him in the practice room and tell him, look, if you get caught side control, what are you going to do? Like, is this you're going to go to this choke? If so, show to me that it works in practice. Like, these are problems we got to face. You know, like I would put Tony in the MMA sparring and I would look at why is he getting taken down? Is it because he's not strong enough? Is it because he's tired? Or is it because he's not doing his sprawl drills? Like, what is it about him getting taken down? What's going on? So, you know, Goggins is a great motivational speaker. Maybe Tony feels he needs that part. And if I had Goggins as a resource, I would definitely use him. I would say, look, we're going to put Tony through this routine. Can you do it with him? Can you get in his ear? You know, and here's why we're doing it. Do you have any suggestions? And here's how many weeks we have. Here's how we see it. And I'll put my 2 cents with him. But fighters need to learn technical skills. They need to be put in situations and test what they're going to do in the situation before fight night. If the guy kicks you in the leg, what are you going to do? Like, are you going to check? Are we going to shoot on the kick? Are we going to switch stance? What's our game plan? Okay, that's the game plan. Let's go test it in practice. It worked. It didn't work. What's your feedback? That's how you get ready for a fight. You know, you try things. You go outside your comfort zone, depending how much time you have. You develop new skills. And then when the fight camp comes around, now we got to stick with what we're comfortable doing. You know, we can't go too far outside our comfort zone. We can't experiment too much now. And I'm sure Goggins can get him in shape. You know, Goggins, what I was seeing there, they were doing the workout side by side, and like Rogan was saying, and Goggins was pushing through, and Tony looked like he was tired. Now, it could be that for some reason, Tony's fitness levels have dipped, and Goggins is going to bring them up, and he's going to fight like old Tony again. That would surprise me because Tony always had that conditioning part. That was always something he had in the bag. He never really got tired in fights, and he definitely was busy in fights. He was really busy. He was throwing things and throwing all sorts of shots, being able to, he is a very aggressive fighter. He did a lot of high energy moves and it didn't bother him in the least. He was in phenomenal conditioning. But he's doing endurance exercises that maybe he's not used to. They're probably far more prolonged and he's breaking down. You know, it's a different energy system. So again, you know, like, I'm hoping Tony is also using MMA coaches. I hope so, you know, because maybe it's just a shot, you know, they're doing a PR stunt and they're going to show a lot of like him puking and look how tough it is. Yeah, that's cool. It gets views, but is it going to get him a win on fight night? He's 26, wife 40, ex-husband lives with them. This is from Ian. Oh boy, we're back on Ian Garry Machado. Adam W says, he's 26 with wife 40. Ex-husband lives with them, who is Ian's nutritionist and put Ian on a vegan diet. while he's not a vegan. And the wife wrote a book on how to be a wag gold digger. Whew, that's a lot to unpack there. Listen, the fact that he's 26 and she's 40, for me, that's not a problem. I don't see that as a problem. If they're in love, they want to be married, that's their business. What harm is it doing? None. Did he put Ian Garry on a vegan diet? Well, I mean, it's not illegal to go on a vegan diet, and some people believe the vegan diet is going to bring you to the moon. Now, I don't eat a ton of meat. Like, I'm back on my regular diet, and I went on the high meat diet, and I like the fact that I gained muscle, but I didn't like the fact that I gained weight. I got I like the fact that I gained muscle, but I also gained a little more fat than I'm used to carrying. So now I'm back on my high carb, low fat diet. I'm feeling much better. I'm slimming down like before. I feel more endurance in the practice room. I feel better in the practice room. I do eat meats, but I keep it much smaller portions and lower fat. People have to experiment. Look, I don't think vegan diet is a complete diet. That's just my opinion. Okay, guys, I know we have all our different opinions, but my main thing is that John McDougall, who wrote Forks Over Knives, he even says himself, he says, I take supplements. He takes vitamin B12 and he takes calcium supplements. Because he says his vegan diet doesn't, he has a deficiency because of his vegan diet. Therefore, he recommends you supplement. Joel Furman, he's not a vegan, he's a nutritarian. He coins his diet the nutritarian diet. He says, look, you need small amounts of meat, proteins, flesh foods, because you need your vitamin B12, calcium, etc. But you don't need much. And I was on that diet for a while, like a very low nutritarian diet. I think it's great. I call it also Okinawan diet. Okinawans, they only eat meat once a month. They eat sweet potato, vegetables. They're the longest living people on the face of the earth. Okinawan diet, less disease, they live the longest. But the thing is, if you want sports performance, I think you need a higher level of protein. To get it only from plants, I feel it gives you too much gas, too much bloating. I've tried to get I do get a lot more of my protein from plants, guys. But I still eat flesh foods to get me over the top, to get me over the 100 grams of protein a day. And I feel best that way because I don't have a lot of bloating. I feel like my recovery is good. But I'm a big believer in plant foods, guys. I'm a big believer. I'm not vegan, but I'm a big believer in plant foods. For me, it works. I think you got to experiment. Maybe he did it for a while and he's feeling really good. And maybe 6 months from now, he's going to feel really bad on vegan. I think that flesh foods are important. They bring things to the table that I think in a long-term vegan diet, you might be missing out on. Again, I'm not an expert on the vegan diet. I'm not trying to claim to be. But in my opinion, just getting all that protein from a vegan diet, in my experience, created too much bloating, too much gas, and also I'd have to take a supplement. That tells me I'm not getting everything I need. And I got to be honest with you guys, when I eat flesh foods, I feel more satisfied. I feel good. I feel nourished. I feel satiated. And I love steak, guys. It's my favorite food to eat. But I keep it as a treat once every week, once every 2 weeks, not more than that. You know, I'll eat meats, let's say 2 to 3 times a week, and I really enjoy it. When I eat flesh food, when I eat turkey, when I eat chicken, when I eat steak, man, do I enjoy it. I love it. It's delicious. And I make sure I keep 100 grams of protein a day. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. Make sure that there are no more super chats. Guys, please, no more super chats. I'm only going to do... Look up Mullah Sandra philosophy. Hassan, did I do that already? Let's see. Mullah Sandra. Mullah Sadra meta philosophy was based on existence of a soul constituent of reality and rejected any role of... Okay, interesting. I will definitely look that up, guys. Instead of listening to people's personal life like Ian Garry and all you guys are obsessed with, you guys should be studying this stuff. Mullah Sadra. Okay, we'll definitely put that into my watch later. It is in my watch later, my friends. I'm going to put it, make sure I don't miss it, and it will be checked out. Thank you very much, Hassan. Okay, guys, what else we got here? What else, Coach? Thoughts on Greg Nelson, MMA coach? Remind me now, Greg Nelson. Oh, he was a phenomenal coach. Yeah, Greg Nelson, yeah. Absolutely, yeah, he was really good. Trained Chunshur. Chunshur got busted for steroids, kind of hurt his legacy, but he was definitely a great coach. Definitely. Okay, guys, let's hit it on a high note and call it a night. Okay, is Coach Zahabi happy? Let's see. I forgot about the poll. 12% no. 88% yes. Guys, I'm a happy camper. Come on, guys. I don't know what you haters and the 12% haters. 12% haters, man. I don't know. No, I'm a fairly happy person, gentlemen. So what can I say? I don't think being happy is the whole pursuit of life. I want to be happy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't want to be happy. I want to be happy dearly. But I think there are some things I would do in spite of it not making me happy because I think it's right. It's correct. Okay, guys, let's end this on a high note. Something fun, something not too heavy. And Zen Buddhism has a high emphasis on nothing or the void. It can't be described. It can't be described, yet it is necessary for everything to exist. Something needs nothing, and vice versa. Death to derp. Death to derp. Guys, I've been studying Eastern philosophy, and I've come across the concept of emptiness, and we have this same concept. I've seen many parallels between Buddhism and Islam, mysticism, and I will tell you that there are many. I was very intrigued with emptiness because when they were telling me about emptiness, I already felt like I know exactly what they're talking about. The doctrine of emptiness is quite complex. That I felt even the author was trying to reiterate it. I don't think he was getting it right. That's how crazy. I think, like, I don't want to tell you expert Buddhists about Buddhism, but I would love to have cross-examined the author. And I just don't think he was getting it correctly, 100% correct. Or he was just scratching the surface. He's not understanding. Because here's the thing about Buddhism, okay? Between the sayings of Buddha and them writing it down was 500 years. It was an oral tradition for 500 years. Guys, we have studies on oral tradition. We have studies. We know what happens to oral traditions. Oral traditions don't survive for 500 years. Things get lost in translation. It's too complicated of a topic. You need a scholar to tell you about it. They have so much information on this. They don't survive for 500 years. Guys, what we have about what the Buddha says cannot be totally accurate. They say Buddha was a royal prince. He was royalty. Which kingdom? Like, what do they say? What do historians say? What kingdom was he in? This is important to me because I want to know, was he a real person? Was he made up? These are things I look into. Okay, it's very important. They can't guarantee us he was an actual figure in history. Now, I believe, look, I'll take their word for it, but they cannot be certain. It just doesn't excite me as much. But the thing is, somebody really wise passed down teachings. Those teachings, from what we know about oral traditions, must have been changed over time. And therefore, the doctrines have to be interpreted in that light. And I feel that the doctrine of emptiness is not exactly how you described. But I'm going to reread your post just to make sure I didn't overlook anything. Zen Buddhism has a high emphasis on, quote, nothing, unquote, or, quote, the void, unquote. It can't be described, yet it's necessary for everything to exist. Something needs nothing, and vice versa. That's definitely not the doctrine of emptiness, but I see what you mean. There has to be a void. There has to be a nothingness for something to exist. I'm not really sold on that because nothing is just an absence of, it's an absence of an object you thought could have been there. It's contingent. I think nothing is contingent, meaning there could have been something in that nothingness. There's nothing illogical about a universe where all of it has a presence. I don't think there's anything contradictory about that. Nothingness is contingent. I hope you understand the term contingent. I hope I'm not making things complicated, but there's nothing Look, if I said I believe there's a triangle out there in the world somewhere that has 4 corners, you'd be like, that's impossible. There's a contradiction. There's nothing that makes it necessary. If me negating its existence leads to a contradiction, that means it's a necessary truth. We can't touch it. Triangles must necessarily have 3 corners and not 4. If I say otherwise, it's a contradiction. Therefore, triangles having 3 corners is a necessary truth. This is deductive logic. Nothingness is contingent. There's nothing contradictory about me saying there's a possible world out there, there's a possible universe where we have no concept of this thing you call nothingness. I don't think there would be any contradiction. If you have an argument to the opposite, I'd love to hear it. And if you have a source to an expert who has an argument to the opposite, I would also like to hear it. And if I'm wrong, I would like to be corrected. Guys, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I always have a blast when we have our crazy talks. And I appreciate you all tuning in. Please like, share, and comment if you enjoyed this. And I'll see you all in the next episode. Thank you.